Will Carroll writes for the Bleacher Report. He's the lead writer for sports medicine. Previously, you might have read Will's work at SI.com, Baseball Prospectus. He's a member of the BBWAA, the Pro Football Writers Association, and he joins us on Hot Stove to lend some actual expertise to the substances we talk so often about. Will, thanks for coming on with us, and we want to just treat us like we are the idiots that we are. Give us like no credit for having any knowledge of anything, and break it down in incredible layman terms. What in fact is HGH, and what does it do for somebody?
Well, starting with HGH, it's human growth hormone. We all have it in some degree. Mostly it's going to be children that have it. As you grow, if you grow more, obviously you have more human growth hormone. Some people have to have it supplemented. We've seen a lot of young people that don't grow quite as well. Dwarfism and other little people have a deficiency, a growth hormone deficiency. Used for humans that have already grown up, athletes and such, there's debate over how effective it is. There is a test for it, a blood test, and Major League Baseball started that last year and has expanded it this year.
Okay, so Will, a lot of major leaguers are full grown, but why would they be using it? Is it better for coming back from an injury, or what's the purpose of it? Some people think it makes you strong like steroids would, and I disagree with that. So can you explain those two fallacies?
Yeah, it's absolutely not an anabolic steroid. All it does is give the body signals to grow. Now, there's some studies that have said that it helps with collagen and other tissue to help heal. That's not been proven the case with athletes. Some say that it works better in a stack with other anabolic steroids, and that, again, there's mixed results. It's awful tough to do human studies on that.
Will, we want to go through some of these other substances here that were listed in the report in the Miami New Times as being among those that Alex Rodriguez either purchased or took through biogenesis. We've talked about HGH. I had never heard of the rest of this list. IGF-1, what is that?
That's insulin growth factor 1. That's actually something that triggers HGH in the body. There was a couple studies that were done back in the early 2000s that said that was the working part of HGH. And because there was no test for either at the time, they were trying to break those down further. There were a couple other growth factors that people were using. There is no test for IGF-1 at this time, though theoretically it's possible. And there's no studies that show it has an athletic performance effect.
What I've learned about it, IGF-1 was that guys are taking that after they've come off their cycle to reboost their hormone, their testosterone again. Am I correct with that?
Yeah, there are some that use it in concert with HCG. You might remember HCG from Manny Ramirez back in, I think it was 2009. After you do a cycle, and testosterone is another thing that a lot of these guys use, the body, if it detects that it has enough testosterone, actually excess testosterone, so it doesn't produce its own. And once you stop that cycle, once you go off the exogenous testosterone, you have to kind of sometimes tell the body to get it going again. That's why we hear about shrinkage and other problems. But that HCG and IGF-1 are often used to restart the body's natural testosterone production.
It's turned into a Seinfeld episode all of a sudden, talking shrinkage on Hot Stove with Will Carroll. But on that same topic, Will, we hear more about testosterone supplement than we ever have before. This isn't 1970s NFL Lyle Alzado with a big needle putting anabolic steroids into his system so much. It's about short burst energy technology for which testosterone has been used a lot in patch form, in topical form, injectable. Talk about the growth of that in this industry.
Yeah, ironic you say growth, but what people have tried to do is beat the test by using low doses, what some call micro-dosing of testosterone. That can be the cream that you rub on the large muscles. We all remember the cream from Balco and Barry Bonds. Barry Bonds, of course, was using it incorrectly, rubbing it on his joints rather than on the large muscles like the thigh or the lower back.
Stay hot.
Patches have done that. We heard with biogenesis they were using troches, which are basically a created lozenge. Testosterone is the male sex hormone. It's what makes men men. And when women take it, you hear voice deepening, hair growth, things like that. So trying to stay below that threshold of 4 to 1, the ratio that triggers the advanced testing, We saw last year that didn't work real well.
That, it's interesting. I wasn't even really aware that Barry Bonds was using it incorrectly. Did you know that?
No, that's the first I've heard that.
But so we know
But
we
we've
all
heard
know
of the pink cream too with this case. Before it was just a cream. Now
Pink
we're hearing
cream
about
is
the pink
almost.
cream. Go ahead,
Yeah,
Will.
pink cream is almost exactly the same formula that they were using at Balco. There are a couple other ingredients. That long list, Tom Verducci had the great article in SI about it, with the long list of ingredients. Most of those are things you'd find in an energy drink. I mean, taurine is why Red Bull is called Red Bull.
Yeah.
There are a lot of lists of things that are perfectly legal and were mixed in there for no apparent reason.
we go to school and we learn about testosterone, we learn about peptides, but where testosterone therapy and testosterone technology has evolved, we hear more about peptides now. And explain why that's relevant in the conversation of PEDs.
Well, with peptides, they're kind of the signal to the body to produce certain hormones. And with the sequencing the genome and all these proteomics that we're starting to learn about and are having some amazing medical advances, these peptides are starting to be abused as well. The peptides such as GHRP and CJC, there's currently a case in Australia where an Australian rules football team was actually injecting its players, and they were kind of forcing it on the players. It's a huge controversy down there. But this is something that's starting to sneak its way into sports because there is no test. They're creating their own drugs like HGH and IGF-1. It's kind of signaling the body to produce more of that, and obviously that would have a performance-enhancing effect, in addition to the fact that if it's producing natural testosterone, you can't test for that.
HGH, IGF-1, testosterone, DHEA, CJC. These are all very coded kind of Greek terms for the lay viewer. Is any of this stuff being used in the general population, or do you have to be a super athlete and have access to all kinds of money and all kinds of, as it turns out, less than reputable physicians to get this stuff?
Well, testosterone is widely used. I can't tell you how many times I've heard a commercial in the last week for Is It Low T or Androgel. We see both of those. I can remember seeing Is It Low T during the MLB playoffs last year and kind of giggling to myself that was a little bit ironic. These are perfectly legal supplements when used by prescription. Even in Major League Baseball, there's a procedure that if you need this, you can do it. There were a couple players after testicular cancer needed testosterone supplementation. There were at least 3 of those that had waivers for that. Certainly a drug like EPO, one that Lance Armstrong confessed to using, that's one that saved countless lives during chemotherapy by preventing anemia. And honestly, Lance probably was introduced to it during his own chemotherapy. So there's a fine line between these drugs. Even HGH, if you go to your local elementary school, you're going to find in the nurse's office a refrigerator full of HGH because more and more kids are using this therapy. It's expensive, but insurance tends to cover it, and everybody wants their kid to be just a little bit taller.
Oh my God, Will, you've just begun what will now be, I can just see it now, a rash of break-ins at grammar schools across the country for people looking for HGH.
That's actually been a problem, Matt.
Has it really?
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Sorry, I cut you off, H. What else do you have for Will?
No, I got 2 things, Will, some terms that we hear a lot. 2 terms. One, stacking, and the other one, a cycle. Can you explain stacking first?
Yeah, stacking is using 1 or 2 or more of these performance-enhancing drugs at the same time. Often you'll see a long-acting, a short-acting. You'll see things mixed in to prevent side effects. A lot of these drugs have some pretty severe side effects. We talked about shrinkage. There's something called gynecomastia, where men develop breasts. Certainly these are things that are both very visible and certainly you don't want them. Same thing with acne. You'll often see something mixed in there to try to help clear the skin. But a stack is just basically a combination of drugs used at the same time.
And then a cycle, when somebody's cycling on or off, how does that work?
That's just a pattern of usage. You don't want to be on it the entire time. The body wouldn't react well to that. And there are certainly effects to staying on it for a long period of time. So 4 to 6 weeks on and then a period of time off. Serious bodybuilders where there's no testing will often be on for 6 to 8 weeks and then off for 6 to 8 weeks. And you'll see them go back and forth with this. You want to maximize the gains while minimizing the side effects.
Now, Will, having discovered and listened to you talk about all this stuff, the knowledge that goes into this is incredible. Are guys capable of doing this on their own, or would they need the help of a Tony Bosch or somebody like that who's been in the news as of late?
That's a great question, Harold. You know, yeah, you could. Certainly there are books out there. There's the Steroid Bible. There's countless internet sites that'll tell you how to do it. And there's also these geniuses that you'll find in the back of a gym. Now, Tony Bosch was maybe a doctor, but I've talked to guys who are in the steroid world about these stacks that he was putting together, what was in the pink cream, and they're like, I don't get it. We know that Balco had scientists and chemists working for them. We've always treated Balco like it was a singular event by catching Victor Conti and his group that we did away with it. But now we find, well, there's this biogenesis in Miami. There was one in Baltimore. There was one in Boston. There's an area in Dallas that's been of interest to baseball over and over again. So these are out there, and you know, unfortunately, they're all too plentiful. If you look around, there are places like Biogenesis, these anti-aging clinics that are prescribing HGH and testosterone for legitimate anti-aging uses, but you know, it can be abused pretty quickly as well.
Wow. Will, incredibly informative stuff. We can't thank you enough for the time and the kind of education you've given us in the last 5 to 10 minutes. Will is on Twitter at Injury Expert and writing currently on Bleacher Report. He's the lead writer for Sports Medicine. Will, thanks for joining us on Hot Stove.
Thanks, guys.
You know, we want to make clear that we're certainly not trying to give anybody a roadmap as to how to use this stuff. When Will talks about the right and wrong combinations and how this is being done, we're trying to educate people. We certainly don't advocate any of the use of this stuff, but we talk about it so often, and it just struck us and our producers yesterday that we should probably inform people, kind of step back and let folks know what exactly all this stuff is.
What surprised you the most of what he had to say?
That Bonds took the stuff incorrectly. I know that was discussed in Game of Shadows. Yeah. It was kind of hinted at, but the fact that the technology was so fresh and that you could read all kinds of things into that. He was so looking for an advantage that he was just, you know, almost haphazardly using the stuff.
You know what stood out to me was the rash of people breaking into elementary schools.
That's frightening.
To steal the HGH.
That's
scary.